All right, our guest is the Chief Operating Officer of the Mexico Tourism Board and the Undersecretary of Tourism, Rodolpho Lopez Negrete. Mr. Lopez Negrete?
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for being our guest. I got an email earlier today, said you'd like to talk about the Mexican Tourism Board's current plans to encourage tourism to Mexico for Texans. Is it safe for Texans to travel to Mexico?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity, Michael. I really appreciate this.
Sure.
Having said that, let me say, if I may, that 22 million foreigners visited Mexico last year. That's a big number. And among those, 5.9 American tourists visited Mexico by air only, which represents an increase of 10% over 2009. And out of Texas specifically, 2.5 million Texans visited Mexico last year, which is a very, very high number. And that represents also a 12% increase over 2009. So as you can see, Texas is a big and priority market for us Mexicans. And we have had the opportunity to be hosting Texans for many, many years and having Texas enjoy all the attributes that Mexico has to offer. So we're very pleased about that.
Well, let me get right to it, because obviously the reason for your effort is the perception that it's not safe to go to Mexico. Some people have that, and I think recent news would suggest that. I'm looking at a Channel 13 report from here for last year, and it says all Americans are being told to stay stateside and out of 6 border cities after at least 50 people were killed in drug violence over the weekend. Travel warning comes after people were killed. We've seen ICE agent Jaime Zapata murdered recently. We've seen shootouts along the border. How can you say to the average, if you had a high school kid or college kid, they're looking for a trip to go across the border into Mexico?
Well, first of all, let me say that Mexico is a large country, and the safety of our visitors is one of our top priorities. If you really analyze the incidents, the unfortunate incidents that we have experienced in Mexico, those are concentrated in very specific pockets of the country, namely the northeast area of the states of Nuevo León, Tamaulipas, and Chihuahua. Furthermore, the major resort destinations in Mexico are as safe as they have been for the last 10, 20 years, and are as safe as any other destination that you could possibly think, including the U.S., including Europe, including the Caribbean, just to name a few. And despite of all that, Mexico tourism destinations have implemented concrete initiatives to ensure the safety of the visitors, which is something that we all normally do anyway when it comes to a spring breakers time. If you would like me, I would like to share some of those to you.
Sure.
First of all, there's an additional deployment of additional policemen in the hotel zones to enforce speed limits. Also, we have conducted and we conduct breathalyzers tests, the construction of passenger bridges over major thoroughfares, the employment of English-speaking tourism officials to offer assistance to the visitors, restriction of alcohol sales, and the strict enforcement of the drinking age, which is 18 years old in Mexico, the inspection of emergency exits in nightclubs, and the hiring of additional lifeguards to patrol the beaches. And furthermore, you have a very strong line of communication with all the U.S. consulates in all these major destinations, such as Cancun, such as Vallarta, such as Acapulco, Los Cabos, Mazatlan, just to name a few. So there's some specific actions that are implemented and executed year on year when it comes to spring breaker time.
Okay. Then I guess the obvious question, Rodolpho Lopez Negrete, the COO of the Mexico Tourism Board and the Undersecretary of Tourism in Mexico, 30,000 people killed in the last 4 years since President Calderon implemented the war on drugs. 30,000 people just in drug-related violence. Over 12,000 last year. Guadalupe, for instance, where the police chief's head turned up in an ice chest. That sort of brutality, widespread lawlessness, If the tourist zones can be protected, why can't Chihuahua? Why can't Guadalupe?
Well, let me first say that this unfortunate violence is a big challenge for us in Mexico. But having said that, this is an issue that is really gang-related. You're talking about gangs against gangs in a territorial dispute. This is by no means anything aimed towards the Mexican population nor tourists. So it's very well concentrated in some specific places in Mexico. As far as the resort destinations in Mexico, they're totally safe. They're perfectly safe. And I think a proof of that is the volume of tourists that we receive year on year vis-a-vis the number of incidents that we experience in these destinations.
How do you count the number of tourists coming in?
Well, we have, through the immigration offices that we have in the different points of the country, that's the official source of information that we get. And as I mentioned before, Michael, we received 22 foreign visitors last year to Mexico. That's a big number. And if I may share some other interesting numbers to you, air arrivals alone, when we closed 2010, increased by 14.3% against 2009. But more importantly, increased by 5.5% against 2008, which was a very important year in tourism, not only for Mexico, but for the world. So yet the attributes of Mexico, the different points in the country that we have, the wonderful experience that we offer, the very warm service that we provide, it's something that visitors really feel attracted to.
Let me ask you this.
I recommend to go to Ciudad Juarez on vacation? Absolutely not. I wouldn't recommend that. Would I recommend to go to other destinations in the northeast part of the border with the U.S.? I wouldn't recommend that either, obviously. But would I recommend the U.S. visitors as a whole, not only spring breakers, to continue to come to Mazatlan, Vallarta, Riviera Nayarit, Cancun, Riviera Maya, Acapulco, et cetera, of course I would.
The Texas DPS is discouraging students from visiting Mexico due to cartel violence. Obviously, that's not helping your causes. The DPS in the state of Texas says at least 65 U.S. citizens were killed in Mexico over the last year, along with kidnappings, sexual assaults, robberies. Are you telling me that those are people that strayed outside of tourist areas?
Absolutely. The majority of those people that unfortunately were experiencing this kind of violence is totally unrelated to tourism. The tourist destinations continue to be safe. As you can very well imagine, our tourist destinations really depend on the visitors that we get from all over the world, particularly North America, and particularly Texas. Texas is a critical market for us. So it is very unfortunate that this information is getting out of context, sending the signal that Mexico as a whole is an unsafe country. Mexico is a safe country. Our tourism destinations are perfectly safe as you have them in America, as safe as you have them in Hawaii or the Caribbean, in most of the islands. But then again, these acts of violence, while very unfortunate and certainly something that is preoccupying for us, are really very much concentrated in very specific areas and among people that are looking for territorial control. And yes, there has been some casualties out of that, which we very deeply regret, and we wish we didn't have those. But as far as visiting Mexico as a tourist, even in places like Mexico City, which is one of the largest cities in the world, as you know, it's a wonderful city to visit. And if you compare the population vis-a-vis the number of crimes that we have in Mexico City, you will be surprised on a positive note.
I will tell you from my own perspective, Rodolpho Lopez Negrete, the Undersecretary of Tourism for Mexico, I will tell you on a personal note, I think that the American populace the general American populace opinion of Mexico, not just the crime issue. I think it has changed negatively over the last several years, and I think that President Calderon's visit to Congress, where he criticized the Arizona law, I think some of the criticism of American law enforcement, particularly of immigration laws, has affected the perception of Mexico negatively, extremely negatively. I don't know if you see that. I don't know if you sense that, but I will tell you, I know a number of people that used to go hunting and fishing, not just to the beaches, but big trips to Mexico, that no longer will go as a political statement.
I can understand that. We're sitting on a situation now that our responsibility as tourism officials is to promote tourism to Mexico and be very candid and honest, and I think we have been, to communicate to our clients which places in Mexico are perfectly safe. Clearly, for me to be speaking with through your program, through your audience, and saying that to the Texas market, please come to Mexico, continue to come to Mexico, to those tourism destinations that I just described, is something that makes me feel perfectly comfortable, because I mean, myself as a Mexican, but also having lived in America many years and other parts of the world, I have had the opportunity to experience places that are dangerous to travel to. And I can say that for any Texas visitor or potential visitor that is thinking about Mexico, and that you can come to Cancun, Riviera Maya, Cozumel, Merida, just to name a few, Vallarta, Riviera Nayarit, and I can tell you, 95% of the country is perfectly all right. I travel all over the country. As a matter of fact, I just spent my anniversary, my 20th anniversary in Acapulco with my wife this weekend. We had an amazing time, and so this is what I can say to you with total honesty. We are conscious about the fact that from a perception against reality situation in the U.S., we're not favored right now, because obviously these incidents of violence have created a lot of uncertainty in the U.S. particularly, and it's something that doesn't help us in promoting tourism by all means, and we recognize that. But all we want to do is to convey to our clients and potential clients that not to get it out of context. I mean, saying that Mexico is unsafe is like saying that the United States is not safe, because if you look at the crime rates in D.C. or in Detroit or New Orleans, the crime rates are pretty high, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the U.S. is unsafe. And the same applies to any other country like Brazil or the U.K. or France or Spain. Mexico has an issue, and that issue is very much focused in certain pockets of the country. It is unfortunate. President Calderon is conducting a very valiant initiative, because he wants to eradicate this problem once and for all, which is the right thing to do. And we're paying a price for it. But that doesn't mean that the major destinations in Mexico, particularly the touristic destinations in Mexico, are unsafe.
Well, I will say this. I agree with the war on drugs. I think that particularly not just the war on drugs, the war on the cartels. Anytime there is a rogue group of people operating in a country. But I don't think you can say with 12,000 people killed last year alone, I mean, these groups, it's true, there are problems in Detroit or New Orleans, but they're where the cops can't get to them. I mean, we're talking about groups that are outgunning the American law enforcement as well as Mexican law enforcement. I just don't see how you can say if they want to take Cancun that you can keep them from it. You're relying on the fact that hopefully they'll leave Cancun alone and hopefully they'll leave Acapulco alone. But frankly, everything else they want, they take. The president was sworn in under cover of darkness in the middle of the night for fear that they would take him out. You know, there are more killings in Mexico than there are in Iraq. I can't see. I understand you have a job to do, but I can't see how you can say that that's safe. I can't.
Well, I just shared with you, and I just shared with you the vision that we have. All the information that you have allowed me to communicate to your public is factual information that we have. We certainly accept that we have certain areas of the country that have experienced extreme violence, and obviously we're not happy with that. But
what percentage of the Mexican economy is tourism?
Tourism is the third largest source of income to the country.
What are the first two? Oil being first?
Oil being first, and receipts from the U.S., from Mexican-American people sending money to Mexico is the second largest. But from the point of view of employment generation, tourism is the second largest, obviously. And one of the most important industries as a whole, because as you know, there's a very important spread of wealth that affects the society in a very positive way. So this is an area that we treasure very much. I don't know when you have, when was the last time you visited one of our destinations in Mexico? But
many times. I've been in Playa, I've been in DF, I've been along pretty much every border town. I've been to Tijuana. I've been to the
Riviera Maya.
Riviera Maya multiple times, maybe 5 times.
Great. Well, then you were able to witness the caliber and the quality and the level of service that we offer in those places, coupled with the fact that value it's right now pretty robust. Just to give you an idea, and for your audience, from a pricing level point of view, we have been able to sustain prices of 2008. So you're really getting a 5-star hotel, and I'm sure you probably witnessed that. A 5-star hotel for a 3-star room rate. So the time to come is now. I think the value is there. The attitude of our people, as you know, because you've witnessed that many times, that has not been altered at all. I think that we get comments all the time. We conduct surveys all the time. And one of the biggest strengths and assets that people keep telling us is, despite of the amazing infrastructure that has been created over the last 10 years, is that at the end of the day, service, warmth, attitude is one of the major attributes that we offer in Mexico.
Oh, sure. I had
with
great
a great price right now.
But let me ask you, so you're telling me that after oil, Mexico makes more money off illegal aliens that come to this country sending it home than it does American tourists coming to Mexico?
Well, I mean, according to the latest figures, yes, the receipts that we receive from, and I'm not saying illegal aliens only, I'm talking about the Mexican-American population as a whole, is not necessarily illegal aliens only. That represents a big number. Yes, it's the second source of income to the country.
So if we're counting on Mexico to help us stem the tide of people who come here, who break the law to come here, we're barking up the wrong tree because it's a major source of the Mexican economy.
Well, again, that's a source of income that does not create jobs necessarily. We're focused on tourism. We're focused on tourism, Michael, and tourism is, as a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago there was a big event led by President Calderon, in which there's a new national agreement for tourism, signed and sealed by the different sectors of not only the tourism entities, but from all the governors of the 32 entities that we have in Mexico, in which 10 major commitments were validated and signed that are much more than promotion. These are across the board in improving infrastructure, includes highways, includes safety, includes every single component of the tourism sector, or that affects the tourism sector. So everybody in Mexico is very conscious about the wealth that tourism generates.
But if we're hoping that at some point Mexico will assist us in deporting illegal aliens and bringing them back to Mexico, we can give up on that because the economy can't sustain
as we strengthen the local economy, as you know, Michael, our paisanos will not be enticed to go to the States. I mean, it's actually it's a situation that is connected to the economy. Mexicans don't go to the States because of the American dream. They go to the States because they need to work. They need a job. It's a little bit different. So as we are able to create more jobs in Mexico, and this is some of the major initiatives that Presidente Calderon has been really focused on. Just to give you an idea, last year a total of 700,000 net jobs were created in Mexico. New jobs, after you discount the firings and the layoffs, as we're able to progress in that area. Clearly, that's the best way to prevent and motivate Mexicans not to go anywhere, just to stay in Mexico and get a job in Mexico and work in Mexico and contribute to the economy in Mexico.
All right, real quick question, Rodolpho Lopez Negrete. How big is the tourism industry to Mexico in terms of gross dollars to Mexico?
In gross dollars, last year equated to $12 billion.
Fair enough. All right, and oil?
Oil is double than that, but it doesn't generate the number of jobs, direct nor indirect, that the tourism industry generates.
And receipts from abroad?
It's barely over 12 billion. If I remember, it's in the neighborhood of 15 billion.
Fair enough.
Last year.
Thanks for the call. Rodolpho Lopez Negrete, the Undersecretary of Tourism and the COO of the Mexico Tourism Board. So if you can't get into Baghdad, Tripoli, or Kabul, Afghanistan, maybe think Mexico.
The Michael Berry Show.